ICGC 42, Leadership, Vision, Influence. That is what our church stands for. At 42, it's always good to remind ourselves about who we are and what we are committed to. Leadership, vision, and influence, Leadership, vision, and influence. And I'll read from Luke's Gospel, chapter 6, and verse 49 and 40. And it says, "And he spoke a parable to them, can the blind lead the blind? Will they not both fall into the ditch? A disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone who is perfectly trained will be like his teacher." Jesus is addressing a major problem affecting people. And then he offers a way out. And in the parable, Jesus begins with a problem, which is a lack of vision. And then he tells about the consequence of that problem, which is destruction. And then he points us to the solution, which is raising leaders. And so that's what Jesus is talking about. However, in my short presentation, I will turn it around and I will talk about leadership, and then I'll talk about the challenge, and then I will talk about the outcome. So the first thing I want to point our attention to is something Jesus is pointing us to, is what I call the process. Jesus says everyone who is perfectly trained will be like their teacher. So Jesus tells us that teachers can produce teachers, and leaders must produce leaders. Normally we think teachers must produce students and leaders produce followers. But Jesus says no, teachers must produce teachers, leaders must produce leaders. If you are a teacher and all you want to produce is students, your students will never be adequate for the problems of society. If all you want to do is to create followers, they would not be adequate. So everyone who is perfectly trained will be like their teacher. So if a teacher does his job well, he will produce teachers. If a leader does his job well, he will produce leaders. So it is in that we find our task as a church. We are called to raise leaders. So we say, raising leaders. It's our mission statement. The first part, raising leaders. Why? Because if we do a good job, then the people we are ministering to should be like us. They shouldn't be perpetually following. So how do we get the job done? What should we do? We encourage our people to follow Jesus Christ, to mature in spirit, in mind, and in conduct. We point people to Jesus. We point people to maturity, spiritually, mentally. That's why we don't joke in this pulpit. That's why we are intentional about how we teach in this pulpit, because we want to produce a thinking congregation, a mature congregation, a spiritual congregation, because we are not producing students, we're not producing followers, we are producing teachers, and we are producing leaders. That is the process of ICGC. The second thing that I want to draw your attention to is the challenge that Jesus posed in that parable. He says, can the blind lead the blind? It's a rhetorical question. In other words, he's asking the question, but within the question there is an implied answer. That the normal answer is no. Can the blind lead the blind? That's what you would normally say. But actually, yes, absolutely, blind people sometimes lead blind people. The blind Jesus is talking about is not just visually challenged people. He's talking about people with no vision, with no clarity of purpose, people who cannot see, people who don't know where they're going, who are headed in the wrong direction and are leading people with them. It sounds like something I want to focus on, but I don't want to go. Can people who don't know where they are going lead others to also go with them? Absolutely. It does happen. The blind sometimes lead the blind. You can have a whole group following somebody who doesn't know where he's going. Could be a church, could be a business, could be a factory, could be a nation, could be a continent. When people who don't know where they are going inspire others to follow them. So that's the challenge of society. Can the blind lead the blind? Yes, they do, and they are actually. So where do we fit in? What is our task as ICGC? We are called to provide vision, to shape the way people see things. That's our mission. So we say shaping vision, bringing clarity, bringing a sense of purpose, bringing direction. One of the things where each one of us must aspire to be when you are a member of this church, one is that you will grow in leadership. And I'm not talking about a position, I'm talking about having a sense of direction for your life. Secondly, that you will have clarity of purpose. Your life will be clear, your purpose will be clear. You're not going to live your life always seeking for somebody to tell you what to do. You would have clarity of purpose. That is vision. How do we do that? We do that by providing guidance so that our people will have a sense of clarity and live purposefully. If you monitor how teaching is done in this church, you would understand that it is done intentionally to offer clarity of purpose. That is why I would not teach for you to put your faith in me. I will not teach as if I hold your destiny in your hand. I will not do that because there is an intention. The intention is that the followers must become leaders. The students must become teachers, and they must have clarity of purpose. They must have vision. We must be a people of vision, a people of clarity, a people of purpose. Not just going to church for church's sake, but going to church so we can learn from the greatest. And who is the greatest? Jesus. We learn from him. We point to him. And in him, we have clarity of vision. In him, we become true leaders. Third thing, Jesus tells us the outcome if the challenge is not corrected. He says, will they not both fall into the ditch? If the blind leads the blind, they will both fall into the ditch. In other words, the leader will fall into a ditch and the followers will also fall into the ditch. When you have a situation where there is mass ditch falling into, mass ditch falling into, it means that the challenge has not been addressed. The blind are following blind people. And so everybody's life is ruined. Sometimes when you look at the African situation, that is the picture I see. When you listen to our national conversations, you find a society without clarity, without purpose. We talk a lot, but have no idea where we're going. Few individuals have vision and live purposefully, but the vast majority of the population, including very well-educated and highly placed people, are leading everybody into a ditch because they themselves are ditch-bound. So what is our task? What must we do? We are called to influence society, raising leaders, shaping vision, influencing society. We are responding to the parable Jesus gave us in Luke chapter 6, 39 and 40. That's our task. And how do we do that? We encourage our people at all levels to get involved in moving the world in the right direction. If you come to church here, and I'm closing, I've done more than 7 minutes. I think I've done 10 minutes. If you come to church here, and you consider this to be your church, you consider me to be your pastor, this is what I want with you. I want to help to point you to Jesus and to help you to have vision for life. Doesn't mean, I'm not telling you to go and have a vision to build a house or a vision to buy a car or vision to, vision simply means you have clarity. Your life is purposeful. You know what your life is about. You know where you are going. At every point, you should know, this is where I'm going. This is what I want to do with my life. My life has a meaning. And that is my passion. And I've endeavored in these 42 years to drive people in that direction. There has to be vision. Why must we have vision? Because there is a challenge. Either we are blind and we need somebody who sees to lead us. Because if the person leading us doesn't have vision, at least we must have vision. If your leader is blind, but you have vision, then when he falls into a ditch, you say, sir, you just fell into a ditch. But there is a bridge here that I'm going to cross. I'm not following you into the ditch. If you are following your leader into a ditch, it simply means you also have no vision. People with vision can survive bad leaders. But people without vision cannot even survive the best leader. Have vision. Don't follow jolly into ditch. Your life must be meaningful. Your life must be purposeful. Your life must be lived intentionally. Don't just follow the crowd. Somebody says something and then you're commenting by heart without even discerning, where do I stand on this matter? How do I make my mind? How do I determine right from wrong? Where is my morality? Where is my belief system? What do I say yes to and what do I say no to? What will I never do and what will I always do? That is vision. Having a sense of clarity. And I pray you become that person. So that when you become the leader of your family or leader of whatever, and people are following you, you'll be a seeing leader. If everybody following you is blind, but you have clarity, they will end up well. But if you don't know where you are going, and everybody following you also doesn't know where he's going, great will be the ditch falling. No matter what happens, whether in this country, Africa, wherever, you can avoid falling into ditches. Because you know where you are going, you know what your life is about. And if there is anything I want to encourage you, that's why I teach the way I teach. That's why I don't do human worship in this place. That's why I don't do self-glorification in this place. That's why I don't come and say I'm the most anointed this and I have this grace and come and touch me. And that is all that mess and foolishness going on. That's why we don't do it here. Because we are not raising followers. We are raising leaders. We are raising teachers, not children. We don't infantilize people. That's why I don't say I'm your puppy. Father, we thank you.